Hello everyone and welcome to my review for Chainsaw Man Chapter 98. That's right, the time has finally come. Chainsaw Man Part 2 has begun at last. And boy, what a chapter for it to start on. Now, before we get into this week's review, as always, if you haven't already, you should definitely be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. I'll be doing Chainsaw Man chapter reactions and reviews every week. And if you haven't already, you should definitely be sure to hit that like button. I'd like to try and hit at least 100 likes on this week's review. Now then, without any further ado, let's get right into this week's chapter. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings regarding this new chapter. The first of which being, my god, does it feel really good to finally have a new chapter. It's been about a year and a half since the last chapter came out. I hadn't realized it's actually already been over a year since my last Chainsaw Man video prior to today's reaction, so, it's been a while. It's good to finally have some new Chainsaw Man content coming out, and to very little surprise, it's very good. So, a few things to talk about with this week's chapter. First off, shout out to my man Bucky. God rest his soul. He was taken before his time. It's a travesty. It's an actual tragedy what happened to Bucky. I weep. July 12th will always be remembered as Bucky Day. I cry every time. That scene just felt so surreal and very, very Chainsaw Man. Speaking of, there are several other things in this chapter that feel very Chainsaw Man. Such as the pacing. The Chainsaw Man pacing is back, the escalation of things, going from, oh my god, Bucky, he remembered my name, I'm gonna go, finally I understand, I've been jealous of all of my classmates, I'm gonna go socialize with them finally, to falling and crushing Bucky, to walking through the street at night with her teacher and classmate, to her classmate turning into a giant flesh monster that kills her, and then her getting technically possessed by a funny owl thing that allows her to create weapons out of people's body parts, and used her teacher's spinal column as a sword, and then made a grenade out of a hand. Yeah, so, it's Chainsaw Man. It feels like Chainsaw Man through and through. The most interesting change, I think, is the fact that now that this is in Jump Plus, Fujimoto's allowed to do some stuff that he wouldn't be allowed to do in normal weekly Shonen Jump. I was kind of wondering, what would change? A lot of people were like, Jesus Christ, Fujimoto's already getting away with so much shit in weekly Jump. Like the Quan Chi double-page color spread. Somehow that got past the Weekly Shonen Jump editorial board, so people were like, if that is allowed through, what the fuck is he gonna do now that he's in Jump Plus? Well, now you can say shit such as a teacher grooming and having sex with one of their students and wanting to do that with another one of their students. I don't think that's something that would be allowed in a weekly Shonen Jump chapter. The violence seems maybe a little more over the top than it was prior, back in Part 1, but Part 1 was very violent already, so it's probably only a little bit of a minor step up. It seems like mostly it's going to be mature content. There's going to be more serious topics that can be brought up going forward into Part 2 that we wouldn't have really been able to see in Part 1. That's seemingly going to be the most notable change that's come from switching magazines. Oh, and presumably Fujimoto will take breaks more often, because I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits of Jump Plus, is they seem to let the authors take breaks quite a bit more often. They have a lot more leeway when it comes to how they want to do things. Next thing, and kind of the biggest thing, probably the thing I'm going to spend the rest of this video talking about, the character who is the main focus of this chapter, Asa Mitaka. She appeared in at least 2 preview things for this chapter. There were a few leaks that came out, and because some people are going to hell, they post these leaks on Twitter and shit without tagging them as spoilers. So I saw the spread with Mitaka walking away after blowing up the Justice Devil, and some people suggested that it was Nayuta, and they were like, oh my god, it's been like a fucking 10-year time skip or something, and I'm like, what the fuck? But apparently that's not what happened. It's a completely different character. The reason their eyes look like Nayuta's is for different reasons. So, yay, I didn't really get spoiled on much of anything for this chapter. Hopefully, no one's posting fucking spoilers early again. It was supposed to be one of the benefits of Jump Plus is that they don't have leaks coming out before the chapter releases. Mitaka's interesting. She's kind of a direct contrast to Denji from the start of Chainsaw Man, where, you know, she's in school, she's learning, she has a roof over her head and food to eat, and she has a lot of people around her that she could be connecting with, but instead she's not. She's jealous of other people, she doesn't interact with them, she doesn't seem to really like a lot of other people. We ultimately find out it's because of jealousy of them. But that's a pretty big contrast to Denji, who basically had nothing and no one, but wanted those sorts of connections. Which is quite interesting, because obviously Mitaka is being set up as a direct oppositionary force to Denji. She wants to kill the Chainsaw Man. She doesn't like him. And the War Devil doesn't like him either. So she gets killed by the Justice Devil because the Justice Devil is jealous of her because the school teacher they have, who was having sex with her, also wanted to fuck Mitaka. So after she gets killed, the War Devil appears, and the War Devil does not really look like what I expected. I forget the name of the bird. It's a bird with like a big ol' eyes and this horrifically large mouth, but it looks like a little owl thing. And I was initially thinking, like, why does the War Devil look like that? That is an interesting choice for war. You would think it would look something like Fujimoto's Captain America drawing or something. But then I thought, oh yeah, there's more to war than just being like a bloodthirsty berserker. And I remember that Athena exists. Athena is essentially the Greek goddess of war. I know it's more so like wisdom and strategy, but strategy is also an important part of war. So, you know, she's also like a war goddess to an extent. So having like a owl adjacent creature represent war is actually not a bad idea. Also, war taking over Mitaka's body does kind of work with like Athena being a war goddess. So, you know, that's neat. This is extremely fascinating because some people seem to not really be sure what exactly Mitaka is now. I think that's the biggest question surrounding her, is that what exactly is she? Is she a fiend or a hybrid? Because she doesn't look like any of the hybrids, and her body got taken over. It's by the War Devil, because he was like, listen, let me take over your body if you want to live. With the hybrids, it seemed to mostly be the devil replacing their heart, and then they have control over their own body. Whereas this wasn't really the case. At least it seems like the wording was a little bit different. However, with a fiend, the person is completely gone, and it's just the devil puppeting around their body. Whereas it seems like Mitaka is still alive, even though her fucking head blew up. She is still partially in control of her body. It seems like it may be kind of a meshing between herself and the War Devil. They almost seem to like kind of both be in control at the same time, like it's a melding of their personalities to an extent, which is very interesting. And War is not necessarily a weapon devil or a tool devil, which would mean, if they are a hybrid, which I think they are, This would be the first hybrid we've seen, which is not a weapon devil hybrid. But it's not, completely out there because War's whole shtick is creating weapons. So they are like the top of the pyramid for weapon devils, because they are just able to turn body parts into weapons. She grabs the pedo teacher's head and rips out his spinal column and turns it into a sword. She takes one of the Justice Devil's hands and turns it into a hand grenade, which is a pun that made me laugh. It is of note, of course, that War is one of the 4 horsemen that got mentioned by Makima towards the end of Part 1, along with the various things Makima wanted to get rid of, including death and hunger. It was a theory that Makima was one of the 4 horsemen devils, because oftentimes I think either famine or pestilence, I think it may be pestilence, gets replaced with conquest, and conquest could be perhaps a synonym for control, which, Makima was the control devil, and if Makima was also one of the 4 horsemen devils, that would explain why her eyes and War's eyes are the same. Maybe all of the 4 horsemen sort of have these same spiral designs in their eyes. It would certainly make sense as to why they look so similar. This does raise the possibility that Mitaka is pretty much the main villain for Part 2. I don't think that'll necessarily be the case, but, as I kind of expected back when Part 1 ended, we are going to be getting the 4 horsemen as kind of the big bads, presumably until we get the other primal devils. Though, I imagine Death would also be a primal devil. Maybe they're the only member of the horsemen that is both a horseman and a primal devil. I don't know if Death would be the strongest of the devils. I imagine it would either be Death or the Unknown Devil. Those would probably be 2 of the most powerful primal devils. So thinking Death will probably be like the final boss for Part 2 or something. They'll be the strongest devil we meet. I am wondering if we're going to be getting Hunger or Pestilence. Which one of those? I saw at least one person on Twitter thinking that maybe the devil that Kobeni is contracted with might be the Hunger Devil, because, well, hers is still a mystery, which means it's probably pretty important. And also, her hobby seems to just be eating things. I don't know how much I buy into that, because I've always subscribed to the theory that her devil is the Misfortune Devil. It just kind of works for how incredibly terrible her luck is, yet her surviving just the most improbable things ever. So we'll have to see how that develops there. But at the end of the chapter, Mitaka and War are like, alright, we're gonna go kill Chainsaw Man. War wants nuclear weapons back because those were a thing that got eaten by the Chainsaw Man, so they don't exist anymore. It is important that War remembers them despite them not existing anymore. Is that just a thing that the 4 horsemen are able to do like Makima was? Maybe. It kind of makes sense if, like, really powerful devils are able to remember things even after they've been removed by the Chainsaw Man. Also, this does make it like a potential plot point to have other villains coming up in the series whose goal will be retrieving a devil from inside of the Chainsaw Man in order to return some concept to reality. We could see a lot of that crazy shit that Makima listed off towards the end of Part 1 make reappearances. The other potential ends for humans other than death. I can't even imagine what the fuck that would mean. So I kind of want to see what it would be. Should be very interesting. So, is Mitaka going to be the main antagonist? Or is she kind of like a rival or deuteragonist? I'm leaning more towards the latter two, because I just don't get the vibe that Mitaka is like a main villain. She'll maybe be like an arc villain for a bit and they'll fight each other, but then they'll, make amends, decide to work together, something like that. Or just decide to be friends. Of course, it wouldn't be a Chainsaw Man arc if we didn't have a woman who happens to be a devil hybrid. Well, they're not necessarily all hybrids, but, you know, a devil woman trying to kill Denji. But I think Mitaka is going to become something of like a supporting character or a deuteragonist, because we really don't have anyone else left to fill that role. I don't think Yoshida is going to become the deuteragonist. He's got his own shit going on. He also doesn't really have much of an established dynamic with Denji. I like Yoshida. I want to see more of him, but I don't think he's going to take up the role of deuteragonist. He'd be more of like a supporting character, I imagine. But Mitaka has very similar motivations to Denji. Is also a teenager in high school, been possessed by a devil so that she can not die. I imagine they'll meet up, they'll fight a bit, and they'll eventually get along, and Mitaka will kind of be our new Aki or Power. We'll see which one. I imagine we're going to be meeting a whole big cast of new characters in the upcoming chapters. Speaking of, I'm assuming that we're going to see Denji in the next chapter, because Mitaka is going to be looking for him to kill him, so we should be seeing our main man, our titular main character, pretty soon. But with that, I think that's pretty much all I had to say about this week's chapter. It was very good. It was a tremendous reintroduction to the series. Great start for part 2. Fujimoto is definitely back. I'm very glad that he took all of this time in order to do everything else that he wanted to do, you know, any other project ideas that he had, get those done with so that he can dedicate all of his focus and passion to continuing this series that we all love. Chainsaw Man has fallen out of my, top series rankings as I've read more series and as more time has gone on, and I'm like, yeah, Chainsaw Man needs more content. When it gets more stuff, I'm very confident that it's going to be creeping its way back up into the upper echelons of my favorite series. And with this chapter, well, I'm even more confident in that than ever. I mean, that's just reassured me that, yeah, Chainsaw Man is going nowhere. Well, it is going places, and those are very, very good places. So yeah, that's all for this week's review. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. I'll be doing Chainsaw Man chapter reactions and reviews every week that we get a new chapter. If you enjoy discussing Chainsaw Man with other people, or you just enjoy the content I produce on this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to that down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Take care.